Sound suppression water system now being armed for release. Confirmation we have 3 main engines ready for ignition. Space Shuttle now on internal power. Liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen fill and drain valves are closed. Solid rocket booster flight data recorders are activated. And the handoff to Atlantis' onboard computers. Atlantis now in control of the countdown.
20.
Firing chain is armed. Sound suppression water system activated. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff of Space Shuttle Atlantis on a mission to build, resupply, and to do research on the International Space Station.
Houston now controlling. Atlantis begins its penultimate journey to shore up the International Space Station. Atlantis now on the proper alignment for its 8.5-minute ride to orbit. 4.5 million pounds of hardware and humans taking aim on the International Outpost. 30 seconds into the flight. Atlantis almost 2 miles in altitude, almost 6 miles downrange from the Kennedy Space Center already, traveling 500 miles an hour. The 3 liquid fuel main engines now throttling back to 72% of rated performance, going into the bucket, reducing the stress on the shuttle as it breaks through the sound barrier. 30 seconds into the flight. Atlantis almost 2 miles in altitude, almost 6 miles downrange from the Kennedy Space Center already, traveling 500 miles an hour.
Atlantis, go with throttle up.
The 3 liquid fuel main engines now throttling back to 72% of rated performance, going into the bucket, by Commander Charlie Soundbar, joined on the flight to Wilmore, Flight Engineer Randy Bresnik and Leland Melvin, seated down in the 30 seconds into the flight. Bobby Satcher, Atlantis almost 2 miles in altitude, almost 6 miles downrange from the Kennedy Space Center already, traveling 530 miles an hour. Seconds into the flight. Atlantis 13 miles in altitude, 15 miles downrange, traveling almost 2,000 liquid fuel main engines now throttling back to 72% of rated performance, going into the bucket by Commander Charlie Soundbar, joined on the flight to Wilmore, Flight Engineer Randy Bresnik and Leland Melvin, seated down in the 30 seconds into the flight. Bobby Satcher, almost 2 miles in altitude, almost 6 miles downrange from the Kennedy. 1 minute 50 seconds into the flight. 10 seconds away from Space Center booster separation. 530 miles an hour. Seconds into the flight. Atlantis 13 miles in altitude, 15 miles downrange, traveling almost 2,000 liquid fuel main engine back to 72% of rated performance, going into the bucket by Commander Charlie Soundbar. Station. 2 minutes 20 seconds into the flight. Through more flight engine altitude. 30 seconds into the flight. Bobby Satcher, almost 6 miles downrange, speed of 100 miles an hour. 1 minute 50 seconds into the flight. 10 seconds away from Space Center booster separation. 530 miles an hour. Seconds into the flight. Atlantis 13 miles down. Range traveling almost 2,000 fuel main engine of rated performance, going into the bucket by Commander Charlie Soundbar, kicking on the afterburners. Atlantis flying on the singular power of its 3 liquid fuel main engines, draining about 1/2 ton of fuel per second from the large fuel tank. 20 seconds into the flight. Coming up more flight engine. 30 seconds into the flight. Almost 6 miles downrange, speed of 100 miles, traveling almost 50 seconds into the flight. 10 seconds away from the Space Center booster separation state with the International Space Station. 500 miles an hour. Seconds into the flight. Atlantis 13 miles down. Range traveling almost 2,000 engine of rated performance, going into the bucket by Commander Charlie Soundbar, kicking on the afterburners. Atlantis flying on the singular power of its 3 liquid fuel main engines, draining 3.5 minutes into the flight per second. Atlantis 2 minutes 20 seconds into the flight. Coming up more flight engine. 30 seconds into the flight. Almost 6 miles downrange, speed of 1,000 miles, traveling almost into the flight. 10 seconds away from the speed state with the international 530 miles an hour into the flight. Atlanta's 13 miles down range. Rated performance going into the knowledge by Commander Charlie Soundball flying on the afterburners. Atlanta's flying with the singular power of its dream 3.5 minutes into the flight per second. Atlanta's systems 20 seconds into the flight, coming up on board 30 seconds into the flight. One engine 10 seconds away from the speed stage with the international 530. Atlanta's 13 miles down. Rated 4 minutes, 20 seconds into the flight. Atlantis now 80 miles downrange, traveling almost 6,000 miles. Singular power of its 3.5 minutes into the system. Normally, Atlantis 20 seconds into the flight. One engine 10 seconds away from the systems officer reports a good flash of evaporator system activated. International Atlantis 13 avionics until the payload bay doors are opened. About an hour and a half 20 seconds into the flight. Atlantis now 60 miles downrange, traveling almost 6,000 miles. Singular power of its 3.5 minutes into the system. Normally, Atlanta's one engine 10 seconds away. Officer reports a good flash of evaporator system activated. Atlanta's 13 load bay doors are open. About an hour and a half 20 seconds miles downrange, traveling almost 6,000 miles. Singular power of the from Capcom Chris Ferguson and one engine failure. However, all three engines continue to perform normally, as do the auxiliary power units and the three power-producing fuel cells. System activated. Atlantis now 67 miles in altitude, 312 miles downrange, traveling almost 8,000 miles an hour. Open. About an hour and a half seconds downrange, traveling almost 6,000 miles. Singular power of the from Capcom Chris Ferguson and one engine failure. However, all three engines continue to perform the auxiliary power units and the three power-producing fuel cells. Now beginning to roll to a 500 swiveling 67 miles an altitude, 312 miles downrange, to a heads-up position of the fuel tanks and more favorable communications to the 6,000 mile satellite systems from Capitol Hill.
Zaragoza 104.
Single engine Zaragoza 104.
Failure. However, all three engines continue to Ferguson power to Commander Atlantis now beginning to roll to the 500 miles enabling the 312 miles downrange to a head tanks and more favorable communications to the 6,000 mile satellite systems.
Zaragoza 104.
Now 6 minutes 45 seconds into the flight. Atlantis 66 miles in altitude, almost 500 miles downrange from the Kennedy Space Center, traveling almost 11,000 miles an hour. 90 seconds left in powered flight.
Single engine press 104.
Failure, however, the engines continue to Ferguson power to Commander Atlantis 67 miles enabling to 312 miles downrange to a head tanks and several favorable communications. Distress on the shuttle and its 6 crew members to that of 3. Now Atlantis approaching 45 seconds into miles a second. Atlantis at the time of 500 miles downrange from now. Atlantis will enter its preliminary orbit at a speed of 5 miles a second. 8 seconds left in powered flight.
Single engine press 104.
Failure, however, the 7 minutes 40 seconds in power flight. Commander Atlantis 67 miles enabling to 312 miles downrange to a head tanks and several favorable communications. Distress on the shuttle and its 6 crew members to 10 seconds. Now 6 minutes 45 seconds into the flight. Second. Atlantis at the time of 500 miles downrange from now. Atlantis will enter its preliminary orbit at a speed of 5 miles a second. 8 seconds left in powered flight. Standing by for main engine cutoff. Failure, however, the 7 minutes 40 seconds into the flight. Main engine cutoff controlled by the boost enabling to stand by for external tank supply. Several favorable communications. Distress on the shuttle and its 6 crew members to 10 seconds. Now Atlantis approaching 45 seconds into the flight. Second. Atlantis at the time of 500 miles downrange from now. Atlantis will enter its preliminary bird's eye view from the external tank seconds left in external tank separation. Atlantis now in its preliminary engine cutoff. Failure, however, the commander will have a call now maneuver Atlantis. Cameras now set to use the naval system. Digital still and video cameras 10 seconds. Tank from downlink a few hours, seconds into the flight. Flawless climb to orbit. Time of Atlantis downrange. Atlantis now until 10 seconds left in external tank separation. Atlantis now in its preliminary engine cutoff. However, the commander will have a call now maneuver. Cameras now set to use the naval system. Digital still and video cameras 10 seconds. Tank from downlink a few hours, seconds into the flight. Flawless climb to orbit. Time of Atlantis downrange. Atlantis now until 10 seconds left in external tank separation. Atlantis now in its preliminary engine cutoff. However, the commander will have a call now maneuver. Cameras now set to use the naval system. Digital still and video cameras 10 seconds. Tank from downlink a few hours, seconds into the flight. Flawless climb to orbit. Time of Atlantis downrange. Now until 10
6.5 minutes from Atlantis' touchdown. Shuttle is going
seconds left in external tank separation.
2 times the speed of sound at the moment, and is currently 86
Digital video cameras 10 seconds. Tank from downlink a few hours, seconds.
6.5 minutes from Atlantis' touchdown. Shuttle is going approaching an imaginary circle leading toward 2 times the speed of sound at the moment. Microwave scan beam landing system. Traveling at 2 times the speed of sound. Shuttle is going circle leading toward 2 times the speed of sound. Microwave scan beam landing system. Traveling at 2 times the speed of sound. Shuttle is going circle leading toward 2 times. Microwave scan beam landing system.
Digital
5 minutes now until Atlantis touchdown. 67 traveling at 2 times.
No change to the weather. The winds will be all headwind, 12 peak 18. Nominal shoot.
Heard we copy all 12 peak 18. All head
5 minutes now until Atlantis touchdown. 67 traveling at 2 times.
No change to the weather. The winds all headwind, 12 peak 18. Nominal shoot.
Seeing here the same view that the
copy
commander and
12
pilot as they approach forming the head until Atlantis setting alignment circle here in just a moment, where they'll be making a 300-degree turn right hand traveling to line up with runway 33.
No change to the weather. The winds will be all headwind, 12 peak 18. Nominal.
Now that the shuttle is seeing here the same view that the
copy of
commander and
12
pilot rate of 600 forming the head to Atlantis setting alignment circle here in just a moment, where they'll be making a 300-degree turn traveling to line up with runway 33.
No change to the weather. The winds will be all headwind, peak 18. Nominal.
Now that the shuttle is seeing here the same view that the
copy of
commander rate of 600 forming the alignment circle here in just a moment,
No change to the weather. The wind peak 18. Nominal.
Now that the shuttle is seeing here the same view,
Flight below.
rate of 600. Landing the alignment circle as it makes its heading alignment circle turn into Kennedy Space Center's runway 33. Shuttle also just announced its arrival at the Space Shuttle landing facility.
No change.
Booms.
Peak 18. Nominal.
Now the shuttle is in control of the
Flight below.
rate of 600. Landing the circle as it makes its heading alignment circle turn into Kennedy Space Center's runway 33. Shuttle also just
Slightly low at the
announced its
90.
We agree.
arrival 90 degrees left in the Space Shuttle landing facility.
No change.
Before it lines up with the runway. Now on runway now the shuttle is in control of shuttle still going at a rate of 355 miles per second. 16,000 feet in altitude at the moment.
Hey, Houston, we're field to site.
The shuttle in control of shuttle still going at a rate of 355 miles per second. 16,000 feet in altitude at the moment. Runway 33 here in view as Commander Charlie Hobaugh lines Space Shuttle Atlantis up for its touchdown in just over 1 minute. The shuttle in control of shuttle still going at a rate of 355 miles per second. 6,700 miles, 16 above in altitude, 1,000 feet in altitude at the moment. Runway 33 here in view as Commander Charlie Hobaugh lines Space Shuttle Atlantis up for its touchdown in just over 1 minute. The shuttle in control of shuttle still going at a rate of 355 miles per second. 6,700 miles, 16 above in altitude, 1,000 feet in altitude at the moment. Runway 33 here in view as Commander Charlie Hobaugh lines Space Shuttle Atlantis up for its touchdown in just over 1 minute. Commander Charlie Hobaugh for shuttle in control of shuttle's nose for landing and going at a rate of 6,700 miles in altitude, 1,000 feet in altitude at the moment. Main gear touchdown, runway 33 here in view as Commander Charlie Hobaugh lines Space Shuttle Atlantis up for its touchdown in just over 1 minute. Nose gear touchdown. Hobaugh for shuttle in control of shuttle's nose is now rolling out and going at a rate of 490,000 in altitude. 138-mile flight to the International Space Station. Runway 33 here in view. Commander Charlie Hobaugh lines the Atlantis up for its touchdown in just over.
Houston, Atlantis, field stop.
Nose gear touchdown. Hobaugh for shuttle in control. Shuttle's nose is now rolling out and going at a rate of 490,000 in altitude. 138-mile flight to the International Space Station. Runway 33 here in view. Commander Charlie Hobaugh lines the Atlantis up for its touchdown in just over.
Houston, Atlantis, field stop.
Nose gear touchdown. Hobaugh for shuttle in control. Shuttle's nose is now rolling out and going at a rate of 490,000 in altitude. 138-mile flight to the International Space Station. Runway 33 here in view. Commander Charlie Hobaugh lines the Atlantis up for its touchdown in just over.
Houston, Atlantis, field stop.
Nose gear touchdown. Hobart clear Charlie control. Shuttle's nose is now rolling out on the radar. 490,000 in altitude. 138-mile flight to the International Space Station. Runway 33 here in view. Commander Charlie Hobart lines the Atlantis up drag chute. Touchdown in just over.
Houston Atlantis, fuel stop.
Nose gear touchdown. Hobart clear Charlie control. Shuttle's nose is now rolling out on the radar. 490,000 in altitude. 138-mile flight to the International Space Station. Runway 33 here in view. Commander Charlie Hobart lines the Atlantis up drag chute. Touchdown in just over.
Houston Atlantis, fuel stop.
Nose gear touchdown. Hobart clear Charlie control. Shuttle's nose is now rolling out on the radar. 490,000 in altitude. 138-mile flight to the International Space Station. Runway 33 here in view. Nose gear touchdown. Hobart clear Charlie control. Shuttle's
Minute 30 seconds.
And the handoff to Atlantis's onboard computers. Atlantis now in control of the countdown.
20.
Firing chain is armed. Sound suppression water system activated. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 3. And tuned off to Atlantis 0 and liftoff of Space Shuttle Atlantis on a mission to build, resupply, on board to do research on the International Space Station. Control of the countdown.
Houston now controlling. Atlantis begins its penultimate journey to shore up the International Space Station.
Roll, Atlantis.
Atlantis now on the proper alignment for its 8.5-minute ride to orbit. 4.5 million pounds of hardware and humans taking aim on the International Outpost. 30 seconds into the flight. Atlantis almost 2 miles in altitude, almost 6 miles downrange from the Kennedy Space Center already, traveling 500 miles an hour. The 3 liquid fuel main engines now throttling back to 72% of rated performance, going into the bucket, reducing the stress on the shuttle as it breaks through the sound barrier. 55 seconds into the flight, the system is operating normally, 9 miles an hour. The speed of Atlantis right now, 6 miles in altitude, 9 miles downrange.
Atlantis, go with throttle.
Atlantis 0 and liftoff of Space.
The throttle up call acknowledged by Commander Charlie Hobart, joined on the flight deck by pilot Butch Wilmore, flight
Shuttle
engineer Randy
Atlantis
Breslin, and
on a
Leland
mission to
Melvin,
build,
seated down at the
resupply,
deck,
on
Mike
board
Foreman,
to
Tommy
do
Sasser,
research on
kicking
the
off their work week with a Monday commute to orbit. 1 minute, 30 seconds
International
into
Space Station. Control of the
miles in altitude. Houston now controlling. Atlantis begins its penultimate journey to shore up the International Space Station. 3 good auxiliary power units, 3 good fuel cells, 3 good main engines. Atlantis now in the proper alignment for its 8.5-minute wind-up orbit, 4.5 minutes of the flight. 10 seconds away from solid rocket booster separation. Pounds of hardware and humans taking aim on the International Outpost. "30 seconds into the flight. Booster officer confirms staging a good solid rocket booster separation. Guidance now converging. Atlantis almost 2 miles in altitude, 6 miles downrange from the Kennedy International Space Station. 2 minutes, 20 seconds into the flight, 34 miles in altitude. Center already traveling 500 miles an hour. Traveling 3,200 miles an hour. The 3 liquid fuel main engines now throttling back to 72% of rated performance, going into the bucket, reducing the stress on propulsion. Officer in Mission Control reports that the orbital maneuvering system engines have ignited. Atlantis kicking on the afterburners. Shuttle as it breaks through the sound barrier. Atlantis flying on the singular power of its 3 liquid fuel main engines, draining about 0.5 ton of fuel per second from the large fuel tank. Coming up on the 3-minute mark into the flight, Atlantis 46 miles in altitude, 81 miles downrange, traveling 55 seconds. Systems operating normally. Atlantis speeding straight as an arrow toward its date with the International Space Station Wednesday morning. 9 miles an hour. The speed of Atlantis right now, 6 miles in altitude, 9 miles downrange.
Atlantis, go with
Atlantis,
throttle.
0 and lift.
3.5 minutes into the flight, all of Atlantis' systems functioning by the book. 55 miles in altitude, 120 miles downrange.
Off,
1,000 miles an hour. Throttle up call acknowledged by Commander Charlie Hobaugh, joined on the flight deck by pilot Butch Wilmore. Flight
Shuttle
engineer
and
Randy
Atlantis.
Resnick,
On mission to
Melvin,
build,
seated down on the
resupply.
deck.
Atlantis, next
On board to do
Saturn,
research.
kicking off their work week with a Monday commute to orbit.
Copies, negative return.
Atlantis now too far downrange, too high in altitude to return to the launch site in the event of an engine failure. All 3 engines performing perfectly. 1 minute, 30 seconds into the flight. 4 minutes, 20 seconds into the flight. Atlantis now 62 miles in altitude, 180 miles downrange.
Control of the
altitude. Houston now controlling. Atlantis performing normally. Atlantis on course, on track for its penultimate journey to shore. The environmental officer reports a good flash evaporator system activated for Atlantis, providing cooling for the shuttle's avionics until the payload bay doors are opened about an hour and a half into the flight. Up the International Space Station, 3 good auxiliary power units, 3 good fuel cells, 3 good main engines.
Atlantis, press to ATO.
Copy, press
Atlantis
ATO.
now. That call up from Capcom Chris Ferguson indicating that Atlantis can now make minimal orbital altitude targets in the proper alignment for its 8.5-minute wind-up orbit, 4.5 minutes of flight, as do the auxiliary power units and the 3 power-producing fuel cells. 5.5 minutes into the flight, Atlantis now 67 miles in altitude, 312 miles downrange, booster separation. 8,000 pounds of hardware and humans taking aim on the International Outpost.
Go engine, 3.
Atlantis now beginning to roll to a heads-up position, the main engine swiveling, enabling 30 seconds into the flight to move to a heads-up position, staging a good solid, gaining more favorable communications through the tracking and data relay satellite system. Rocket booster separation, guidance now converging. Atlantis almost 2 miles in altitude, 6 miles downrange from the Kennedy International Space Station.
Single engine Zaragoza 104.
Press to Miko, single engine Zaragoza 104.
2 minutes 20 seconds into the flight, 34 miles an altitude center already, traveling 500 miles an hour. Traveling orbital cutoff targets in the event of an engine failure.
For the pitch.
Okay, nominal shutdown, go for plus X, go for the pitch.
1,200 miles an hour. Now 6 minutes 45 seconds into the flight. Atlantis 66 miles in altitude, almost 500 miles downrange from the Kennedy Space Center, traveling
3 liquid fuel main engine.
1,000 miles an hour. 90 seconds left in powered flight. Engines now throttling back to 72% of rated performance, going into the bucket, reducing
104.
the stress on propulsion officer and mission control reports that the orbital 7.5-minute mark into the flight. The main engines will once again be throttled down to limit the stress on the shuttle and its 6 crew members to that of 3 times the effective gravity. Atlantis kicking on the afterburner at a speed of more than 4 miles a second. At the main engine cut off a minute from now, Atlantis will enter its preliminary orbit at a speed of 5 miles a second. To the sound barrier. Atlantis flying on the singular power of 40 seconds into the flight. Atlantis providing liquid fuel main engines, draining about 0.5 ton of fuel per second from the large fuel tank. Coming up on this 10 seconds into the flight. Three-minute mark into the flight. Atlantis 46 miles in altitude. Standing by for main engine cutoff. 81 miles downrange, traveling 55 seconds. Systems confirmed by the booster officer, standing by for external tank separation. Operating normally. Atlantis speeding straight as an arrow toward its state with the International and the bird's eye view from the external tank camera of Space Station Wednesday separation. Atlantis 9 miles an hour at the speed of 6 miles in altitude. Commander Charlie Hobaugh will now maneuver Atlantis so that cameras embedded in the shuttle's umbilical well can perform photography of the discarded external fuel tank. And Mike Foreman and Leland Melvin are about to use digital still and video cameras to capture handheld imagery of the tank for downlink a few hours from now. A flawless climb to orbit. Atlantis and its 6 crew members en route now to the International Space Station.
It's not required.
Video cameras to capture handheld imagery for downlink a few hours from now. A flawless climb to orbit for the shuttle Atlantis and its 6 crew members en route now to the International Space Station. Video cameras to capture handheld imagery of the tank for downlink a few hours from now. A flawless climb to orbit for the shuttle Atlantis and its 6 crew members en route now to the International Space Station. Video cameras to capture handheld imagery of the tank for down. Downlink a few hours from now. A flawless climb to orbit for the shuttle Atlantis and its 6 crew members. En route now to the International Space Station. Video camera.